Welcome to the House of Cons. I'm Blackjack. It's Tuesday, November 28th, 2023. Monaga Tribe up. Salute. I hope y'all like those sounds we got rocking in the background. You know, we always try to keep something popping to keep you rocking. Salute to everybody in the house. Do me a favor, go ahead and hit the subscribe, like, share the video. And yeah, we about to get busy, man. Hey, I've been dropping content left and right. I've been trying to keep it popping. You know, we trying to ride this year on out the right way, Monaga. And I wanted to talk again about the quote unquote freedmen. You know what I'm saying? We always hear the word freedmen. Freedmen this, freedmen that. Freedmen or freedmen. But what does it all really mean? Has we ever thought about what the word freedman really mean? And you know, I'm touching bases on it for a reason, because if we take a look at the thumbnail from a third eye point of view, not a bird eye point of view, we see the Wikipedia in the background. And the Wikipedia, in instance, it says quote unquote black Indians in the United States. So I went ahead and superimposed a couple Nagas on top of that to paint the picture clear for whoever don't understand. You know, the wave is on the move, because they really starting to fess up. Where they halfway fessing up. And when I say halfway fessing up, they ain't telling the whole truth. They giving up some truth, but not all the truth. Like they got their little Wikipedia, black Indians in the United States, quote unquote black Indians. Well, we see the tenement statue in the on the right hand side of the Naga. Then we see a real sister on the left hand side, a real sister in the flesh. And you know, they're saying black Indians in the United States. We're gonna talk about it. You know, we're gonna take a hard look at it. And what's a freedman? Because usually when you see a Naga and he in some kind of Indian tribe, especially if he on a roll or on any kind of government roll, a dog's roll, they gonna say he and she a freedman or a free woman off top. You know what I'm saying? They gonna jump right to that right away. They gonna say, oh yeah, this person on the Cherokee roll because they're a freedman. They'll say this person on a Muskogee roll because they're a freedman. That's how they gonna explain every Naga that's on the road. They gonna call you a freedman. They're gonna be implying that you ain't really an Indian, that you are African, some kind of African slave that got freed, that escaped or whatever. They might call you a maroon. You know, they might call you a maroon or a freedman. Anytime a Naga, think about it now. Just think about what I'm saying for a minute. We about to get into it. Anytime a Naga associated with America as a native or an indigenous person, they always calling them a freedman or a maroon. They try to imply that you not really an Indian. That's what they try to imply. But we're gonna talk about this because it's some points I want to make about it all. Because like I say, you get a Naga say, hey man, my grandma on the Cherokee freedman roll, and you be like, freedman? What they mean by freedman? They trying to imply that she from somewhere else, that she from Zimbabwe or something. So they use these words to try to fool you, but those really be the real Indians. The ones they call them maroons, the ones they call them freedmen, and the ones they call them ADOS or African American. Them the real Indians. You and I. We're gonna talk about it and we're gonna look at it. We're gonna take a hard look. Every time a Naga on the Cherokee roll, if a Naga Seminole, they'll call him a Cimarron. Say he an escaped slave, right? They're gonna imply that he's an African. That's what they're gonna be trying to say. He's really an African. But let's take a deep understanding. Let's take a deep understanding of this. And we're gonna take our time with it. So we're gonna first look at, you know, real quick, what they say a freedman is. Wikipedia tells us that a freedman or a freed woman is a formerly enslaved person who has been released from slavery, usually by legal means. They say usually legally. They say usually, sometimes though illegally, I guess. Slaves were freed by manumission, A fugitive slave is a person who escaped enslavement by fleeing. All right, let's start right there for a minute. Hey, Enoch 0407 in the house, tribe up. They say a freedman or a freed woman got released, got freed legally. They say a fugitive slave escaped illegally. So they drawing the line. I'm letting them paint themselves in the corner intentionally. Now, when they say a maroon is a descendant of an African in America and the islands of the Indian Ocean who escaped from slavery and formed their own settlements. Usually they try to say they intermarried with Indians. That's what they want to try to say. That's when they want to try to explain them having Indian culture by saying they intermarried with Indians. But these just Nagas that was Indians all the time. They never was Africans. I argue that a lot of them weren't never even slaves. They never wouldn't even escape slaves. Not only were they not Africans, they were just living in the mountains. And the colonizer was going up in there trying to enslave them and just lying about it all. You was trying to enslave the Juka. You was trying to enslave all them tribes. You call them maroons. You was trying to enslave them. You was running up on them in the mountains and they was whooping your ass. So they call you freedman, they call you maroon, they trying to imply you from somewhere else. Nah. So when we look at this, black Indians in the United States, DOS and Lighten went in the house, tribe up, salute. So-called black Indians, they just Indians. So-called black, they just Indians. Stop adding something extra to us. They just Indians, we just Indians. Nothing else. Just call us going, we'll just stick with that. Just call us Indians then. Just Indians, Managa. Black Indians, you want to call them mulatto Indians. They're just Indians. They just indigenous Americans. That's all we is. Ain't nothing else to it. Nah. They say, listening to them, they say, black Indians are Native American people. Let's start right there. Black Indians are indigenous Americans. Let's start right there. We don't need to say nothing else. Now here they go. Defined as Native American due to disclaimer. They go to disclaimer. Due to being affiliated with Native American communities and being culturally Native American. Oh, you talking like the Juka? Cause they speak Native American, cause they speak American English. American English and Indian languages. Are you saying they culturally Native American because they speak Algonquin and they dress the same damn way? They got on loincloths and they bowed and arrowed and feathered up. Are you saying that they're culturally Native American because of that? But what else are you trying to say? What else are you trying to imply? Then they say who also have significant African American heritage. Who says? You did their DNA back then? You did they family tree back then? Who says, oh, your only excuse is because they are dark, huh? That's your only excuse, huh? You say, oh, these Indians right here, they got significant African ancestry. I can see it. They're black. This is what the racist colonizer came and told your ancestors. Historically, now here they go. This is how they want to explain you being on the road and being in the tribe and being over here in America. They want to try to say that historically certain Native American tribes have had close relations with African Americans, especially in regions where slavery was prevalent or where free people of color have historically resided. Members of the 5 civilized tribes participated in holding enslaved Africans, not African Americans. Cut that out. It wasn't no African Americans back then. So you saying that the 5 civilized tribes participated in enslaving Africans? How? Did they go to Africa and get the Africans and bring them back on the slave ship? Or did they take a time out from fighting the European colonizers and say, hold on, time out British people, time out Frenchmen, time out Spaniards, let us buy some of your African slaves? How did the 5 civilized tribes obtain so-called black African slaves? in the southeast. But then you say African American because you know they're not African. You know you can't just say African, and you know that term African American ain't even exist back then. They just was Americans. You slide an African in there in the southeast, and some enslaved or formerly enslaved people migrated with them to the west on the Trail of Tears in 1830, and later during the period of Indian removal. Managa, tribe bust salute. Hey, peace to Michael Servia for the $20 cash out. That's amazing, man. I appreciate that. All support is appreciated. If you want to support the House of Cons, we got the cash up at the bottom of the screen, cash.app/$ House of Cons. Your support is greatly appreciated and greatly needed, Managa. It says, in controversial actions since the late 20th century, the Cherokees, Creek, and similar nations tightened their rules for membership and at times excluded freedmen. Okay, here we go. They say excluded freedmen. Why would you exclude the freedmen? You're saying they're not American Indians. You're trying to say they're not indigenous. What you're trying to say, they're Africans? Well, let's debunk that right now. We're going to debunk all claims. Who did not have at least one ancestor listed as Native American. Yeah, thanks to Walter Plecker. Yeah, thanks to Henry Dawes, they excluded them. And when they put them on the rolls, they called them freedmen. This exclusion was later was appealed in courts, both because of the treaty conditions and in some cases because of possible inaccuracies in some of the rolls. Yeah, a whole lot of inaccuracies. The Chickasaw Nation never extended citizenship to Chickasaw freedmen. Now, okay, so they made their claim. They said the 5 civilized tribes, the white tribes, they say they started getting quote unquote so-called African slaves from Europeans. That's their claim, right? That's their claim. They made their claim. But I recall being taught about the Seminole Indians that three whole Seminole wars went down because the Europeans was mad about slaves escaping and joining with the Indians. So what's the deal? Was the white Indians buying Africans from Europeans? Or was the Europeans mad and had 3 Seminole wars because they claimed the African slaves was escaping from Georgia and South Carolina and going to Florida and getting with the Seminoles? What's the deal? Was they buying slaves from you, or was the slaves escaping? Because that's the only 2 ways you explain Nagas being on your government rolls or your government dogs roll. Let me pause the music. It's a good time to pause the music right now. They only a Naga on the Freedmen rolls, on the dogs, on the Chickasaw roll, on the Cherokee roll, the Seminole roll. The first thing they say, you a freedman. They call your ancestor freedman. And then we just looked at them explaining it, saying, yeah, the white tribes, the pale-face tribes, the 5 friendly tribes, they was buying Africans from Europeans. This is what they tell us. Then we know 3 Seminole wars went down because they claimed African slaves was escaping, and somehow they knew how to get right to the Cherokee neighborhood. They knew how to get right to the Seminole neighborhood. Not only that, they knew how to dress just like them. Not only that, they spoke their Algonquin languages. All of this. And not only that, a lot of them was chiefs. So them your 2 reasons. You say they either escaped slavery and was sneaking with the Indians, or you just straight up and say, hey, well, the Indians was bought something from the But how can the enemy buy slaves from the enemy? That don't make sense right there. That don't make sense right there. It's contradiction. In the court of law, you lost already in the court of law. But there's more evidence to speak on. There's more evidence to speak on. They say, let's get back to where we at. Hold on. They say the Maroons, descendants of Africans, right? Now go here. Early in the 19th century, while the rapidly growing United States expanded into the lower South, white settlers faced what they considered an obstacle. This area was home to the Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and similar nations. These Indian nations, in the view of the settlers and many other white Americans, were standing in the way of progress. Eager for land and to raise cotton, the settlers pressured the federal government to acquire Indian territory. Andrew Jackson, former from Tennessee, was a forceful proponent of Indian removal. In 1814, he commanded the U.S. military, the whole U.S. military forces that defeat a faction of the Creek Nation. In their defeat, the Creeks lost 22 million acres of land in southern Georgia and central Alabama. The United States acquired more land in 1818 when spurred in part by the motivation to punish the Seminoles for their practice of harboring fugitive slaves. Okay, so was the Seminoles and the so-called African slaves best friends? Or was these just Seminoles escaping back to their people? How they knew where to find them at? How they knew where the Seminole neighborhood was at? How they knew how to talk to them? How they intermarried with them if it ain't their people? Jackson's troops invaded Spanish Florida. Andrew Jackson had to bring the whole military to come up in Florida. But the so-called African slaves knew just where to go, huh? All the way from Georgia and South Carolina and in between. But they supposed to be Africans. They supposed to be from Zimbabwe. They shouldn't even know their way 2 miles out. From 1814 to 1824, Jackson was instrumental in negotiating 9 of 11 treaties which divested the southern tribes of their eastern lands in exchange for lands in the west. The tribes agreed to the treaties for strategic reasons. They wanted to appease the government in hopes of retaining some of their land. Let me see. And the war was, it was 3 wars, and one was on the response because they claimed the Seminoles wouldn't give up the Negroes, and the Seminoles is the Negroes. The majority of the Seminoles is the Negroes. The ancient one in the house, legend of Nagachard in the house, tribe but salute. Look, the presence of the fugitives enraged white planters and fueled their desire to defeat the Seminoles. So the presence of the African slaves, or that you call Africans, which we know is just other Seminoles, the presence of these so-called Africans with the Seminoles enraged white planters. But you finna turn around and you finna tell me, you finna tell me though, on the other foot with the forward tongue, you finna turn and tell me with the forward tongue. Let me pull it up. That following this development, many indigenous tribes began to acquire Africans as slaves. And 5 civilized tribes purchased slaves from their white neighbors. Did they purchase slaves from the white neighbors, or was Andrew Jackson so pissed off about the Seminoles that you calling Africans escaping and getting back to the neighborhood, back to the hood, that the presence of the fugitives enraged white planters and fire fueled their desire to defeat the Seminoles, and you went on for war and war? You can't have it both ways. You try to cover your tracks with lies, and we will walk them down. You can't tell me you was enraged for what planters was enraged and fueled because of the so-called African fugitive slaves with escaping and going with the Seminoles, and then you gonna turn around and tell me that the 5 white tribes buying Africans? What's the deal? I know what the deal is. You lying about the past. I know what the deal is. I know that back in the first Seminole War, when Britain controlled Florida, the British often incited Seminoles against American settlers who were migrating south into Seminole territory. These old conflicts, combined with the safe haven Seminoles provided so-called black, so-called African slaves, no, just other Seminoles, caused the U.S. Army to attack the whole tribe in the first Seminole War. But no, you say these knockers on the freedmen because they were just slaves of the Indians. Nope, they didn't escape and run to the Indians. Nah, they said that, but they were just slaves. The Indians really bought slaves from the white, they enemies. You say, you say, where we at? You say runaway slaves made direct reference to the connections with Africans had in Native Americans. communities. Reward notices told African slaves who ran off with his Indian wife. How an African get an Indian wife? You big dummy. He was just an Indian too. Down in Pocahontas War, you say a resident of Detroit observed that the native tribes revolting were killing any whites they came across. Yeah, because they was black. And they say they killing any whites they came across. They came across, but was saving and caressing all the other Negroes, all the Nagas. They say they were saving and caressing all the Nagas they take. It's right there. In Pontiac's War. In 1753, during the chaos of Pontiac's War, a resident of Detroit observed that the Nagas, the Naga tribes, revolting were killing all the white people they came across, but they were saving and caressing all the Nagas. So what is it? How did the Nagas get on the freedmen rolls? Are they Indians? Or are they African slaves that the white tribes bought from the Europeans? Supposed to have been their enemy. What's the truth? We know what the truth is. We know exactly what the truth is. Your cover up is busted. The Cherokee used legal means in their attempts to safeguard their rights. These people so goofy, man. These people thought Johnny Cochran was dead. They don't know that's just Unc. They say reward notices in colonial newspapers told of African slaves who ran off with his Indian wife or had kin amongst the Indians or is part Indian and speaks their language very good. He speak their language better than he speak ours. He don't even speak Zimbabwe. They say enslaved Africans fled the colony and took refuge with local Native Americans. How? How they knew where they was at? How would they make it all the way over there where the Seminoles and the Cherokees at? And they supposed to be from West Africa. Sound like to me ain't no place like home. African American slaves live with Seminole Indians in communities or family groups, both within territorial boundaries and outside of them, in a relationship characterized as benevolent servitude, benevolent slavery. Here you want to characterize a relationship as benevolent slavery when it's just Naga and Naga. You trying to act like it's Naga and some other people. The jig is up. Under the Seminoles, blacks serve the Seminoles is the blacks in varying capacities as advisors, interpreters, warriors, hunters, and field hands. Many interpreters. How they interpreters? You mean the Ku Klux Klan can come here in 1492 and double back all the way to Africa in the 1600s, go get some Africans, and they bring the Africans over here, and the Africans speak Seminole language before the Europeans had them been here 200 years already, so they say 100 years. Many intermarried with Indians. Most blacks living amongst the Seminoles consider it an improvement. Hi, Jay. Hi, Jay. Because we're going to always go back to the source. We're going to always go back to the source. We'll always go back to the source. Between 1492 and 1880, this been glossed over. 5.5 million Native Americans enslaved, 50 million of them killed. We're going to always go back to the source. We're going to always go back to the origin because the Naga is the origin. Some Indian tribes held war captives as slaves prior to enduring European colonization. Some Native Americans were captured and sold by others into slavery to Europeans, while others were captured and sold to slavery themselves by Europeans themselves. Europeans was capturing Indians. Indians was capturing Indians, enslaving them. Nobody was capturing Africans and enslaving Africans. Only people getting enslaved was Indians. Europeans were capturing them and doing it, except for the European ones that came over. Ain't no African sold you to a European. Other Indians sold your ancestors to European. Europeans ain't get you out of Africa. They got you out of America and enslaved you. Many Native American tribes practiced some form of slavery before Europe, before Columbus. Who they was enslaving? Each other. Slavery was hereditary after slaves was taken as prisoners of war among some Pacific Northwest tribes. They did not buy Africans from Europeans. They did not go to Africa in no canoe and buy no Africans. They enslaved each other. We're gonna always go back to that. Your only two reasons for Nagas being on the Freedmen roll is you call them Freedmen. For them being on the Dawes roll, the Chickasaw roll, the Cherokee roll, is you call them Freedmen. You call them escaped slaves. You say they escaped from white people and went with the Seminoles. Andrew Jackson had a whole war about it. Then you turn around and how the hell they even find the Seminoles? Then you turn around and say, well, no, the five civilized tribes was buying slaves from African slaves from Europeans. That's how they got black. Even though you was at war with them, that don't make sense either. Your only two reasons from them being there, neither one makes sense. And we debunk both of them. Freedmen are not Africans. I don't care if they was enslaved and they escaped. If they escaped, there was other Indians. Indians escaped and Europeans and went back with their Indian brethren. Indians enslaved other Indians, not Africans. So any Indian that had a slave was just another Indian. If any tribe had Indians, if any tribe had slaves, those slaves were Indians, not Africans. Any freedman is an indigenous American. He is not an African. Tribe up.